Cartesian versus polar, which I don't think is as much an issue as is relative versus absolute. Now, if you've already taken the Excel course, CEG 115A, you know that there is a difference between relative and absolute. So relative is related to or starting from where you are now. Absolute is a very specific place on the Cartesian map that is origin. So I've got a couple of examples for you here. So here are my coordinate lists, and you can see there's Cartesian coordinates. The first point is given. Polar coordinates, you can see I don't have coordinates for a starting point, so I'm going to assume 0, 0, which is origin. Remember, angles are counterclockwise from the east by default. You can change that in the units command, but we're not getting there yet. That's like chapter 10 or something like that. So this is what I'm going to draw for you. And let's draw it first relative. And so here you can see that the polar ones, the dot has a black circle around it. So you can see in Cartesian, it's just this grid, and you can see every point ends up on the grid. But polar is a vector. So that is a magnitude and a direction. So here's the polar coordinates. So you can see the black line. So the first one is a line from origin to the first point. It is 14 units long at an angle of approximately 45.5 degrees. Now, I did not use a protractor, so please forgive me. So this is relative. Now let's take a look at how that looks in absolute terms. So that absolute means that everything is computed from origin itself. Very different. In fact, it goes off because remember, for the Cartesian ones, I even had some negative numbers indicating that I was either going left or down, which is typical of surveying as well. But here, everything had to start from origin, and so it's crazy. So relative, absolute. Yeah, a lot of times we mean to do this, and we accidentally do this. And that depends on what environment you are in. So if you are doing absolute, what's the symbol for absolute coordinates? It is the hashtag or pound symbol or number sign or sharp, whatever comes to your mind. If it is relative, we use the at symbol preceding the coordinates. At, like I'm starting at and I'm going here. So at symbol is relative, number sign is absolute. Now here's the thing. Well, when do I use that? Isn't there a time when I don't use one and it means so? Actually, you can use them both all the time. It doesn't matter. The default thing comes in with the environment that you choose to use them. So the dynamic input, which is very handy for a lot of things, defaults to relative coordinates. Whether they're Cartesian or polar, it doesn't matter. It always defaults to relative. You can still type the at symbol, but you don't have to. The inverse is true of the command line window. So the command line window defaults to absolute coordinates. So if you're given a points list, and get your cursor in the command line window and turn off the dynamic input because you're given absolute coordinates, use them. But if you're given distances between things, that's relative. And so you want to make sure that you're using relative coordinates. If you like the command line window, great, use it. Just make sure you put an at symbol before every single coordinate. Don't miss one or you'll make a mistake. Or just turn on your dynamic input with the F12 key or the little icon down in the status bar and use that, and then you won't have to worry about it. So it's just leveraging the environment. That's really what I was trying to explain in the notes. It's less complicated in real life when you get your hands on it, which is what I want you guys to do. Remember, if you're not playing, you're not learning. So get those playgrounds out. Just fool around with all the things that you're learning before you try your assignments, because you will be a lot more productive. Remember, time your assignments. I want to make sure you're not spending way too much time on these drawings.